Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Talking About the Big Stuff podcast with Michael Cole and Matthew Cravat. I am Michael Cole.
And I am Matthew Cravat.
Let's rock and roll.
Tonight, I want to start off before we dive fully into the subject. I'll explain why I'm asking, or what the thing that made this episode kind of gave me the idea for this. So, I was approached by a religious person in my life who knows that I'm an atheist, and they have recently lost someone. The person died. Before you make any lost somebody jokes, where can they find them? No, they lost someone via death recently, and when they've been hearing friends and family saying like, "Well, they're in heaven now," it is ringing hollower than it has in other times in their life, and so they, knowing that I'm an atheist, expressed some doubt to me, saying like, I'm not as confident that there is a heaven as I once was.
The heaven story is a big crack in Christianity because it makes no sense.
For me personally,
and
this person knows this. This person knows that heaven was like the last thing that I held on to, and so I think that was part of why I was trusted to talk about this with. But also, I know that is true, that a lot of people, heaven's the first thing that goes or starts to like poke holes, and so they mentioned like, if heaven, if everybody's telling me that, but like, if heaven, if I was fully believing it, would I be sad if I believed they were going to heaven and they were going off to this better place? And so
yeah.
I wanted to talk about what we do as atheists when people come to us. In this case, it was definitely a place of trust, and it wasn't to challenge me. It was to kind of get a perspective that they don't have otherwise in their lives. And my response was, and I didn't want to feel like I'm trying to convert them or deconvert them.
See, it's funny because I was at an old boss of mine's mother's funeral, and they were saying in a positive way about how many people she converted to Christ in their times of need, like when they lost someone. And I'm like, this is not a good thing. Being a predator who swoops in when someone's at their lowest and getting them to commit to your system of belief is a negative, not a positive.
Right, and I don't want to do that, but I also so I think it's a hard balancing act that I'm finding, which is, I don't want to. They're asking my opinion because they know this about me, so I'm trying to give that in a positive way, and also not give it in a pushy way. So my response was, I know the person, one of the people that they wonder about, that had died a few years ago. There you are. So not the person that, I mean, I did know the person that died most recently, but they lost a parent a few years ago, and they worry about that, the parents. And I said, like, I knew your parent, and if there's a heaven, I would think that parent is in heaven. If there isn't a heaven, your parent was suffering, and your parent is no longer suffering. So, like, in this case, I think either way is good. Like, either way is peaceful, at rest. Like, not a bad thing. It's not a choice between nothing in hell, or heaven and being life being cut way too short. I was saying that this person, not the most recent death that is kind of making them doubt, but they're going back to the loss of one of their parents, which was in the last few years, and they were talking to me about how they worry that their parent isn't in heaven. And I knew their parent and said, that they were a really good person.
That's not the rules. It's all about belief, baby.
I said, so if there is a heaven, I would think that they're in heaven. But if there isn't a heaven, they were also suffering for the last few years of their life from, ailment. And so they're at peace now. So it's kind of like, even if the heaven part fades away for you, you should know that they are at peace.
What if they're in hell, Michael?
Maybe. I don't know. I'm Catholic.
The all-loving God created a place of eternal punishment, you know.
But he loves you. He loves you,
and he needs your
money. He needs money. Just can't balance the budget. So anyway, when I was talking about it with them, I was realizing that like part of you've had more experience. When we met, I was way further down the road than this person is. You know, you're the one that kind of was there at the end of the road for me, but you've been an atheist for, you know, actively been an atheist for a lot longer. And so I was wondering if you had any, because I think that there would be some benefit to the person not being a Christian anymore. But I also think that like that's something that they have to come to on their own. They're also not typically in a lot of the more toxic versions of Christianity. So like it isn't something that I've ever felt the need to like broach with them. And so like to me, you know, there is a mourning period, I think, for a lot of people when they're coming out of it, and I don't want to push that either, because you know if they are not wanting to be not religious, they just happen to have this one doubt, I don't want to be like, let's pry that open and see what's inside.
The thing is, I subscribe, if I subscribe to any religion, it's the Oracle in Matrix. And I really think that the Wachowskis had got it right when they had the scene in the little playground outside of the apartments where Neo's trying to make a decision, and she says, you've already made the decision. You're trying to understand the decision you've already made. And until you understand your decision, you won't feel like you made it.
Yeah.
Because you don't decide to stop believing. You don't decide to, you know, believe or not believe. You just do or don't. But coming to grips with it and admitting it to yourself and understanding it is what the journey is.
That was such a fantastic scene. And with the other religious iconography that was in that film, that was a very like come to a head moment in the description of all of the tropes that were already there. And I definitely connected with that, because when I watched that, I was deep in religion, and I thought, Neo's Jesus and he rises at the end, and wait, why are we questioning religion this early?
I agree. Like when I met you, Matthew, I had already made the decision. I just didn't understand the decision. I do think that it's not like as binary as that. I think that they're like I could see this person just having a moment of like, well, I mean, this grief doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I'm not saying right now. I'm not saying that this person has made the decision that's the decision they made. Like they may have made the decision that they may still be believing, but they're confused about because they had some doubt and they still haven't understood. Yeah. Like I'm not saying which way they chose, and it's like even when like I chose to quit my job at one point, and I spent months agonizing: should I ask for a package? Should I take when they're restructuring, or should I not? And I was like, my wife was like, you've never gone through this questioning part before. You've always just been like, I hope I don't lose my job. So something's different. And the different thing was I knew I wanted to leave. I just had to admit it to myself. I was looking for justification for what I already knew. So I'm not saying that your friend has already decided, or not decided, but it has lost their faith and is trying to understand it. But they've had, whatever the issue is, it's decided. They just don't understand what the decision is. And you might be able to push them another way for a different decision point, by information.
Yeah, because I think that also when it comes to deconstruction, like a thorough deconstruction, not just the crack in the dam, that we have right now, it can be for a lot of people death by 1,000 cuts, and so this might be the first cut, and like what's done is done now. Like I think that's what, if I'm reading you correctly. So like if there's no more cuts, they might be fine.
They may need the other cuts to admit to themselves where they are.
True.
I believe in this so long. I don't want to admit to myself that I don't believe. But if I don't believe in the heaven part, then everything else falls apart. Like once you believe take one of the legs away, the whole building falls apart. It's just Wile E. Coyote floating in the air because you haven't realized yet that there's no ground underneath you. And it's the time it takes is how many things you need to happen before you realize a bird needs to fly by, and all these things need to happen before you look down and realize that you haven't been on ground the whole time.
Yeah.
So one of my a good friend of mine who used to be a Pentecostal preacher, and is now an active, politically active atheist. He where he started losing his faith was multifaceted, because he was Pentecostal and he was way out into he spoke in tongues, he did the whole 9 yards, and there were a couple of different stories he tells of different factors. But one of the big ones related to this was he was like the third time he had to go to a family's house to console them after they lost a child. And by lost, I mean the child died. And he had to be like, oh, God works in mysterious ways. Oh, they're in a better place. So like all these things you say. And then he'd go out and sit in his car and cry, going, that just sounds so hollow to say to someone who lost their child. And like, it sounded hollow to him as the preacher, as he was trying to say it, that these things don't make any sense. And
that is somewhat to what my friend is going through, because while they're being told it as a conciliatory thing, the people telling them that are also in the same boat with the person that just died. So like, it's not just like random people being like, oh, I heard your family member died.
Yeah,
they're in heaven now. It's people who were roughly as affected by it, or more, or slightly, they're in the same boat. And my friend is saying like, it just doesn't feel like it should be this.
It sounds like what it is. It's a here's something to a shiny object to distract you, so you won't have to deal with the emotion that you lost the person.
Exactly.
Earlier on in your monologue, before I lost Seganol, you were talking about you talked somewhat about like you wouldn't be so upset if you really believed in heaven. Like, it'd be, and I always think about that kind of thing of like, if you believe someone was going to heaven, it would be like they moved away. You wouldn't be crying your eyes out that someone died. You'd just be like, oh, they went somewhere else. I won't see them for a while. So why should you be upset? It's a thing of when, if sometimes people get to the point where they realize, wait, if I believed in heaven, why am I upset that this person died? It's just like they moved to a better place. They're living in a resort now, and one day I get to go to the resort. I can miss them, but why am I crying? Why am I sorry for them? If you really believed in heaven. Have you ever watched, I know you watched a lot of YouTube during your deconversion process. Did you ever watch the cartoons by Dark Matter 2525?
You've told me about them. I did not watch them.
So I love Dark Matter 2525. Most of their stuff, his stuff, is very political, anti-Trump, anti-MAGA stuff now, but his old stuff is all religion-based. But Dark Matter 2025, Dark Matter 2525 has a cartoon about heaven, where it's about if people really believed in heaven, and it's a guy and he's in the hospital with his wife, and he's got a huge tumor on his head, and the x-ray behind him has an arrow pointing at it saying huge fucking tumor. And the doctor goes, I got great news. It's a tumor. It's aggressive. You're going to die. And he goes, yes, thank you, doctor. Thank you for telling me I'm going to heaven. How soon do I get to go? And he goes, well, that's the bad news. It'll be 6 months to a year. He goes, what? Modern medicine, my ass. You can give me a pill to make my dick hard, but I have to wait 6 months to a year to go to heaven? This sucks. And he goes out, and he's walking, and he's with his daughter, and he's telling her that he gets to go to heaven soon. He's so excited. And then a car whizzes by and hits her and crushes her. And he runs over and he goes, oh my God, you killed my daughter. Thank you so much. You're a hero. You sent my daughter to heaven. And on the day that I find out I'm going to heaven, it's the best day ever. And it's like, that's what it should be like. I used to always wonder, why is murder a bad thing in a Christian worldview? Because you either sent someone to heaven or to hell. Either way, you did a good thing in a Christian worldview, to me, who's not a Christian, which I guess it's good that I'm not a Christian. But yeah. I mean, I guess there are some serial killers who feel that way, right? They're sending people where they belong.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the weird one to me. It's the weirdest thing. I don't, especially Christian version of heaven, I really don't get.
Yeah. Well, and Logan's been asking a lot about heaven lately, which is interesting. And I told, and I just kind of ask him questions, but then I did say, he was describing what he thinks heaven is like, and he was describing almost verbatim What Dreams May Come with Robin Williams, and I'm like, oh, we got to watch that because it's a cool movie.
So you were having you had already started to make your decision before you knew Michael. and Matthew as you are now, it's completely different.
Mhm.
What was that? What was that big shift for you? Like, what was the largest realization? Because Matthew was saying, oh, he had the Pentecostal preacher as the friend, and he would have almost a crisis
Yeah.
on his own, saying, I can't keep telling people this. It's so not real and provable.
Yeah.
It's just it's not real. What was your big moment?
Okay, so well, mine was the big moment where I actually said the words was a friend. I mean, because for me and uh, for anybody that hasn't gone all the way back to episode 2 of this podcast, Matthew and I kind of talk about it a little bit, but to me, all the things that kind of lead us to atheism as we kind of are, it's actually a series of 4 or 5 questions. Is there a God? Is religion beneficial? Whether or not there is a God. Is that God a good God? If that God, if we're say Christian God is real, is that God a good God? Jewish God, is that God a good God?
Yeah.
I can't remember what the other question. So like they were all different things that I had to slowly deconstruct each. So the first one for me was growing up Catholic, and I was having doubts before this church scandal happened, like because I didn't believe in some of the more literal stuff that they believe in, like the transubstantiation. I didn't believe in that. It just didn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
And so like that was just that, but that doesn't get me away from God and Jesus. That gets me away from Catholicism. And then and then I went on kind of like wanting to know what I did believe and what I did think, and that took about 15 years or so, maybe closer to 20 years.
Oh wow, okay.
But the thing that was kind of the final moment, and I've said it before about like it happened at a really bad time because it happened 4 days before I became the Catholic godfather to my nephew. I had already agreed to it, and then I realized I was an atheist, and Sarah was like, "Shut the fuck up until Monday."
Don't tell. Right, don't tell anyone.
No, but the thing that was the final straw for me was my friend died in a car accident.
Oh wow.
And like I've said before, the heaven thing was the hardest part for me to get rid of because
okay.
I have a grandmother that I didn't get to meet. I have a grandmother that died when I was 30 that I loved. She was one of my favorite people. And I just kept thinking like if I get to go to heaven, I get to meet my grandmother, I get to see my other grandmother, and when I think I was 30, I'm 40, so it would have been 34-ish, maybe 35 when this friend died. I think it was 34. 33, 34. And when she died, and I just kind of felt like I'm not going to see her again. Like I just had that feeling of like I'm not going to get to see her again. And then I was listening to The Scathing Atheist, and every week on The Scathing Atheist, I don't know if you've listened to the podcast at all.
A little bit, yeah.
He does a diatribe every week, and it's just like a 2-3 minute, like a rant that he wants to do about whatever topic that like he thinks works. He had just lost a friend, and he's talking about how you know Christians think that you're going to get to see the person in heaven. Christians get to do this. They get to basically put off true grieving by doing it. And I was having like literally, I mean, I had already at that point, it had been 3 months since she died, but I had been thinking about it pretty consistently. And I said like, and I'm like, I just don't feel like I'm going to see her again. And then he said it, and he's like, but we as atheists get to actually grieve them, which is something that they deserve. Like, he goes, if and he said, I will try to find it because it's on YouTube. I'll try to find just the diatribe and link it because it is the moment where he put all the confusion, he put that into words for me. And And I was washing the dishes with my headphones in, and I was listening to it, and I turned the water off, took my headphones out, and I said to Sarah, "I'm an atheist," and she's like, and then she said, "Shut the fuck up till Monday," because because I was
I really think that I grew up in a seriously religious household. Like church was an entire day event.
Yeah.
Like we went for the first service. My real parents, were in the choir. I was in the youth group. We went on mission trips. My brother's gone on like 3 or 4 of them to Africa. Like this is a real thing for us. Now, of course, between my brother and I am the only one. Just like Tigger. And it was my like mid 30s when it was just, I can believe there's something, but this super structured, organized idea where all these different cultures believe there is, as a way to explain
Yeah.
the unexplainable, which is a common atheist kind of stance.
Yeah.
So you're saying that, so you would look at a religious person and say, so that benevolent God gave your grandma cancer?
Mhm.
Oh, well, he did it to test me. He riddled her body and put her in pain to test you?
Yeah.
Well, that sounds
Well,
like a selfish
so
asshole.
to me, the problem of evil addresses the question of, if there is a God, is God good? More than
Yeah.
it does, is there a God? Because I could see there being an evil God as much as I could see there being a good God.
Okay,
And
true.
from what I've read of
Yeah.
the Bible, the God, the God is the villain of the Old Testament, like largely. So like the idea, so to me, the problem of evil never got me further away from believing in a God. It just got me further away from believing God is good.
Yeah, well, okay.
All right, welcome back.
That angle is purposeful as well. I like it.
Yeah. I just wonder, what is our responsibility as atheists and friends and family, like more so on the friends and family side of things than as atheists? Because I think,
I don't think atheists have a responsibility to anything. There's nothing to have a
right,
responsibility to. Yeah. So here's the interesting thing. And when I went downstairs, my wife chimed in on the conversation a little bit, and she's like, "Well, if you're in a non-toxic church and it makes you happy, then I don't see really that much of a problem
Right.
with it." And I said, "Okay, let me flip it. Your friend is going to a palm reader and giving them money, like the same way they donate to the church, and the palm reader is making shit up and makes them feel better. Would you say, hey, you're being conned by a palm reader? Or would you say, oh, yeah, keep giving your money to the palm reader, makes you feel better?
Okay, in the case of my friend that we're talking about right now, they don't give money to the palm reader.
Good move.
They just believe in God and Jesus. They don't attend a specific denomination.
Mm-hmm.
I know their belief system pretty well, and I think that their belief system is almost exclusively the non-toxic parts of Christianity, and they're not giving money to any any, like, they may give money to certain Christian charities, sometimes, but they're
Yeah.
like,
So I know while I was off, you were talking about scathing atheists a little bit, and Noah, and he always says this, but the good churches give cover to the bad. Whenever you can say they're not all bad, that
right,
helps the bad one,
yeah,
survive.
that's absolutely true. But again,
Yeah.
they don't go to a church, so like,
Right. But I mean, that's what I'm saying. That's one of my feelings is like, if someone's believing in garbage, and even though it's not harming them, do you let them continue to believe in garbage? And again, and my answer, I don't know. It's the question that's for each person to ask. There's no right answer to that. When I have conversations of such a nature to someone, like they're asking me about my disbelief, and I feel like, oh, maybe it's because they're questioning. I mean, I don't necessarily know if it is, whatever. I just like to be, well, I'll have the conversation, and not pussyfoot around it. So you're at the office or whatever, or you're out, hanging out with this friend, and they're like, I don't know, my great aunt, was 120. She was so vibrant, and then she died, and I don't know what to do about it, and I think it's wrong to be predatory and say, well, let me tell you the truth, but to say, well, the way I look at it is, we had the time we had, and it's sad that we didn't have more, but there's no reason to believe there's a next life. I mean, to me, it goes back a step. There's no reason to believe there's a soul, because to me, if there was a soul as I see it in TV and fiction that has my personality and my me wrapped up in it, then why does me get cranky when me is tired or hungry? Like, why should a Snickers bar change my personality if my personality isn't just completely locked in the meat that is me?
Yeah.
Like, why does changing the meat change my personality if there's a
Yeah,
soul?
that's a good
So I don't
point.
even believe there's a soul to begin with to go on to heaven or hell or reincarnate or whatever personally. And I don't mind sharing that viewpoint with someone at whatever time. I don't feel like it's being predatory to share my
Agreed.
view if they ask.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
I
especially if they, in this case, I was asked, kind of.
Yeah, I wouldn't swoop in and say, "You look like you're hurting. Let me tell you something. If you didn't believe in God, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't go door
I
to
heard your
door
friend
knocking on the
died. Well,
door
guess
and
what? There's no
tell
heaven.
you, like, knock, knock, knock. Have you heard about
Nothing.
Dan Dennett?
Have you heard about nothing?
You heard about the nothing? The nothing is destroying
So what you're
Fantasia.
saying is you understand and have empathy for people who their religion is what they say gives them empathy.
Yeah.
You don't want to crush their dreams and say, oh yeah, no, she's just going to be a pile of ash when they cremate her. That's literally it. You're going to hold a box of dead person in your house for no purpose than to remember
Yeah.
them. Yeah, like that's cool, but no, you're right. I'm not going to go to that person and say, oh well, it's all just shit, because that's not a way to get someone to understand your viewpoint either.
Yeah.
But then at the same time,
Well,
saying your religion gives you empathy is also, no, you give you empathy.
yeah.
Your care for the common man is what gives you empathy, not magic sky god.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's like the classic. If you don't believe in God, why don't you just rape and murder as many people as you want to? And the answer, of course,
I do.
that Ricky Gervais famously gives and Penn Jillette famously gives is,
Yep.
I do rape and murder as much as I want to, and that number is zero. If
Exactly.
the number
I
is
don't
not
want
zero
to.
for you, something's wrong
Yeah.
with you.
I was gonna say in regards to what Alex was just saying too is like, so I agree with the empathy part of it, but I also think that like we are, you and I, Matthew, at least I don't know how open you are about it, Alex, in your everyday life, but like we're open enough that I think that like I wouldn't necessarily go up to someone who's grieving and be like, I don't believe in God, but when we're not talking about somebody who's like, oh, your friend died or your family member died, I am open. I talk about like what do you want to get done with your body, and I say like whatever's the least environmental or whatever's the least environmental friendly thing. No, whatever's the most
No.
environmentally friendly thing.
Sorry,
I'll even usually throw in a little joke of like, I literally don't give a shit what they do with my body. I don't believe that that's me anymore. And
Well, we've had
Right.
this conversation a couple of weeks ago.
but I will say that in front of those people when it's, and so I think you can extrapolate from that what like, oh well, if he thinks that about himself, that's what he thinks about everybody else. But there is a difference between saying it the way I just did and being like, I heard your friend died. Well, guess what? That's just a husk of a human being.
I'm
Let
not
Alex
comfortable
talk,
with
then
that
we'll
yet.
jump in.
So
Right.
my atheism is really recent,
Yeah.
and I say really like in a couple of years recent. So I grew up in what is almost a Quaker household where like we don't talk about it.
Ooh, I speak Quaker. I had a girlfriend who was Mennonite. She taught me a couple of words of Quaker.
Oh, nice.
Hold on. Wait, let me get the pronunciation right. Fuck thee.
I know that
Shove
one.
it up thine asshole.
I know that one too.
Yeah, I learned those.
My grandpa used to tell me that all the time. No, so like we just don't talk about religion and politics. You just keep it to yourself.
Yeah.
So if I'm amongst people, like again, I used to work with Mike.
Mike, it was
We would
Mike.
be in the,
I know we look
we would,
alike, but it was Mike.
we would be in the same office. We would be in the same desk area. I had no problem talking with him about it because it wasn't understood between
Yeah.
us. But I'm not in the Southeast just openly speaking about this. Now, my wife, sure, I'll discuss it with her, but she's aware of my understanding and doesn't see me and she doesn't see me as being disingenuous.
Yeah.
She sees it as me discussing something that's on my hopelessly autistic mind.
So
that's what she sees.
I will say this. So a couple years ago at work, I think it was either right before or right after the podcast started, a few people at work had somehow it came up, and I was like, "Oh, I'm an atheist."
That's when I was the guest on the podcast talking about atheism.
Well, that was when it came up with my boss. But I think I think it was already up. I think we were already talking about it before that, and I said something about like being an atheist, and it's similar, and it's similar to when I mentioned that I am bipolar, and if you mention it in front of people that then you mentioned it kind of in a way that is matter of fact. It allows people to kind of come over later and be like, hey, I heard you mentioning earlier, like, what is that about? What does that mean? And so I did get quite a bit of that at work, about both, but being bipolar and about being atheist. I had a woman that I worked with who was very religious, and she was asking about when I mentioned that I was atheist, and she was like, because a lot of religious people are told that atheists hate God, and so we had these good conversations.
Atheists are Satanists, even
Yeah,
though Satan is a Christian
yeah,
concept.
but we had some really good conversations, and she kind of was like, I didn't know any of this, like we don't learn this, and it's like, yeah, I get that, like I didn't.
I think I spoke about a conversation that I had with a coworker about like why I don't cheat versus why she doesn't cheat. And I'm like, same reasons.
Yeah,
Yeah, you believe you'd be forgiven if you cheat, so that's not. So God isn't even the reason you don't cheat because you can get forgiven
yeah,
for that. It's all the other reasons you
yeah,
don't cheat.
yeah. And yeah, and a lot of my morality stuff has not shifted since, not in relation to the religion. Some of my
Yeah,
morality stuff
yeah,
did.
from a Republican and Democrat, that did
Right.
it.
Well, so, yes, and in a lot of ways that did it. Becoming, working in
Or vice versa, that happening made the political shift happen, maybe more
no,
appropriate.
I honestly think that working in retail with a working sense of logic and empathy is what made me go from conservative to liberal. Because I was working in at the beginning of late stage capitalism. I was working where they were like, that Walmart model of like, let's pay you as minimal as possible, work you, and then like anytime we're just gonna like we're gonna make it act like it's your fault, everything that happens. And I dropped out of college initially. I ended up going back, but I dropped out of college. So my friends were graduating high school at the same time as no, sorry, my high school friends were graduating college at the same time as the 2008. We would have graduated in 2007. So like they're graduating into this terrible market. I'm work without a degree. I'm getting paid essentially what they're getting paid, and which is shit. Like it was shit money for all of us. And it's like you've been told for 22 years or whatever we were at that point that that you know get a degree and do this and it will work, and people will, the people at the top will pay because they want good workers and all these things. And it very clearly became like, this is horseshit. And that,
I was about to say that's not for this episode. That's
no,
not.
no, no. And so like that's where the a lot of that initial a lot of that initial morality change came from that. And then that led the party change. The religious change was kind of different because even when I was fully at my most religious, I, like there's never been a point in my life that I thought being gay was wrong. And partly, I grew up with a dad who, for lack of a better term, is an atheist. He doesn't use the word for himself, but he's been very clear since I was a kid that he doesn't believe in a god. He,
That was the same for my dad until he moved down here and religion
yeah,
was all around him. Like in New York, he was like, it sounds political to say atheist. So I'm not going to want to say that. Like he clearly didn't believe in any religion
yeah.
stuff. He just didn't like the word because he thought it meant activist
Oh,
until
yeah.
he moved here. And then he kind of felt like an activist.
Yeah. And then, and my dad had known gay people, and when it would come up in conversation, my dad, obviously most people's father, especially when their father's present in their life, is their first role model of a man. And so many people get homophobia from their father or their uncles or whatever. My dad had no homophobia. Like like he worked with some gay men and they were openly gay because it's Massachusetts. It was pretty, like, even in the late 90s, it was, pretty
I
low
mean, gay
risk.
marriage was
Low,
Massachusetts first, right?
yeah, that was the year I graduated high school. But like even in like 98, 99, my dad was like, oh yeah, my coworker, and who he really liked, like so like I didn't grow up with those things that a lot of religious people have to deconvert to get better on those morality points. So for me,
Yeah, I had hippie parents, so it definitely wasn't an
yeah,
issue. Yeah.
yeah. And so like, I mean, the one thing that maybe was semi tied to my religion was when I used to be pro choice. I used to be pro-life, and now I'm pro-choice. And that one could be somewhere deep down that could be the lack of religion, but it's also like,
well, so once you leave the religion, there's no one yelling at you to believe one way or the other, and you can reevaluate your
true,
stance.
yeah.
So what I find amusing is I think we are all in agreement that this is not a time to swoop in on your friend
Yes.
and try to force them to change their way. But it is, we all agree also it would be better for them to come to reality than even the light fantasy that they live in, since they're not regular churchgoers.
Yeah.
It's probably not that daily on their life. So honesty, and if they want to have the conversation, have the conversation, to be honest. But I think it's amusing to me that we are having this conversation, and it's something we have to think about and consider. Because could you imagine a bunch of religious people sitting around and saying,
Yeah.
when my friend's family member died, I didn't want to tell them that as a Hindu I believe in reincarnation. I don't want to tell them as a Christian I believe in heaven. But they are religious people, no matter what the religion, are so willing to say this is, and even if they're not saying your religion's wrong, mine's right, they're so willing to say my religion teaches X,
right,
even if they're flexible.
Well, but I think that you and I talked. I think it was the initial atheist episode. It could have been one of the other ones. The first few times you were on, but we talked about the idea of there is a little bit to some degree, and a lot of that is current modern society. Like religions are more tolerant of other religions than the like null set, essentially.
Right.
So like.
People are fine if I tell them I'm Jewish. They don't say, why don't you believe in Jesus? If I say I'm an atheist, they'll say, why don't you believe in Jesus?
In my Catholic church that we went to as a kid, I remember like a rabbi coming during mass to talk to us. Like he got up with the priest and they talked in unison about but they would never have had an atheist come up. So I agree with you that like, religious people would not be having the like, what is my moral obligation here? Where is the line for me? And I will say this, partly it's me not wanting to cross any lines, but partly it's me not. This is a somewhat selfish reason, but I don't want, if that person does lose their religion and is somewhat, whether they mourn it or is they upset about it. I don't want them to associate me with
they get back in their religion again and Mike made me give up religion for 5 years and I have to repent because of Mike.
Well, even yes, sure, in that way too, but I also don't want it to be just like a resentment between this person and I, because like I just want to be here for the person in a hard time, and that's what I'm trying, and that can be really difficult. Now, do I go to certain countries with our atheist group and tell people, have you heard about nothing? I do that sometimes, but
they'd go knocking on doors to tell people don't believe in the Transformers.
Yeah. Well, it's not that the Transformers are the problem. It's just that like Bumblebee might be a better movie, but it's not the original Transformers.
Right. We don't walk around arguing which Transformers movie to watch.
Yeah.
Not a thing.
It's weird that you meant.
It's like a lot of people say atheists, or we won't shut up being atheists. Like, we wear this giant atheist symbol on our chest and build buildings with giant atheist symbols outside the building and go door to door knocking on it and make every president say atheist things at the end of their speeches. Yeah. That's what we do.
Get exceptions to like
laws don't apply to us because
taxes and laws, and I was also going to say exceptions to like, oh, you can't wear that in school unless it's for atheist purposes or.
We don't have a special book that we insist is part of government and or not religious proceedings, like court cases.
Origin of the species, but otherwise,
I'll say we have documents, though. We have
there are documents. If any of you want to come over to the dark side, we got papers and documents.
And cookies.
Yeah.
But I will say also, though, so for anyone who's found this particular episode of the podcast because they're struggling with disbelief versus belief, this is not a resource. I'm going to give a resource, not a resource to deconvert someone against their will or anything. But if someone is like, you know what, I realize that I don't believe anymore, but I'm hung up on fear of hell or wondering how do I replace this in my life, or I'm losing my friend group or whatever. There's a website called recoveringfromreligion.org. And they are an organization started by Dr. Darrell Ray, who with people who are trained. Like there's an online chat, there's phone numbers. Online chat is international. Phone number, I think it's just U.S. maybe, but you can talk to someone who's actually trained in some manner to have conversations about what you're going through, deconverting, and help you deal with the mental issues and stress and whatever depression or whatever it's causing in you. Like they're people who are trained therapists. They have a thing called the therapy project where they can help hook you up with a therapist who is secular, so you don't get a therapist who tells you pray on it or something like that. You can know at least they're science based. They also have something called the clergy project. So if you happen to be a clergy member who no longer believes, but your entire life, your job, where you live, everything is tied up into your religion, the clergy project is kind of like an underground network of people in the same position you are who can share and support each other while you try to figure out what's next. I have two friends who are I mentioned one of them earlier, but I have two friends who are ex-evangelical preachers, and one of them is finance for a mortgage house, and one of them is a real estate agent now. Like they had to find careers that they didn't have any previous careers. They spent, since college or since seminary preaching.
Well, and that's the religious people who were afforded some level of real education. There's also, they talk about the Jewish community, and I apologize, I'm not going to remember what the exact group is in New York City, where they're really not getting a real education, and some of them can't even read essentially. And so how do you deconvert when you're not equipped for the world in those most basic senses too?
Yeah. Well, it's the same. What they're going through is the same as just homeschooled alt-right Christian kids, or who go to
that was the first example I could think of, because there was a big story about that recently.
They both go through the same experience. So if they go to a school that teaches them their religion and doesn't teach them real world stuff, or the Amish, once they if they leave as teens and they don't want to go back, they're starting from zero almost because of what they didn't learn.
Yeah, absolutely.
And please, any leaving the Amish thing on television is very likely a drama and not realistic. So please don't go, speaking of the Amish, to any of those mid 2000s when the Leave the Amish craze was big, and there were 2 or 3 different things about it. There is a couple of real documentaries. They're usually about Rumspringa, but not necessarily about leaving the Amish community.
Right.
So if you really are stuck in that kind of thing, any of the folks that may be listening, keep in mind there are this is what's interesting, and I thought about this when we doing the show open. The larger the religion and the more organized and widespread it is, the more in-depth, quality, and available the resources are for you to question it.
In a lot of ways, that is true, because Catholicism, especially, right? I think it's almost born out of a sense of cockiness, right? Because Catholicism is suffering a huge lack of I don't know what they would call it, a loss of people that believe, because they've allowed two things. They've allowed people to learn outside, and they've also allowed inter faith marriage, which is you're diluting the brand, which in a lot of ways, you're less of a cult because of that, for sure. But also, you're gonna kill your religion doing that.
What does it say that by letting people learn outside of your walls, you lose members?
Yeah.
Letting people experience other things.
It's damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah.
Build on Alex's comment about Amish documentaries. If you watch any documentary that you're enjoying, it's probably not a very good documentary.
There's a very short form documentary about the Amish from their mid to late 90s that I really enjoy. And there's this part where a local boy kicks an Amish guy in the butt.
That's Harrison Ford's Witness. That's not a documentary.
No.
Witness.
A local boy kicked him in the butt last week. He just smiled at him and he turned the other cheek.
Yeah, that's just
it's Weird Al.
Now, I'm coming on camera for this one. Full pause. Yes, you can enjoy a documentary as someone like us. The Vow. It was from 2020, and it's the Nexium cult, and they were a not religious organization ran by a guy named Keith Raniere. Now, I am telling you, that is an interesting documentary. You know what? You're right. Interesting and entertaining are two different things.
The more entertaining a documentary is, it's popular on Netflix, it's probably not a really good, down-to-earth journalistic documentary that's really unbiased.
What about the Tiger Monarch?
Usually not so
What about the Tiger Monarch one? I felt
Oh,
Tiger Monarch.
oh my God.
Tiger King.
Tiger King, yeah.
I
Tiger
said-
Monarch.
I was-
What? You need to make this episode Tiger Monarch.
You make a clip. Yeah, no, the
He's a Trumper, the
Huh?
same. He's a
Yeah.
Trumper. I saw a TikTok recently of celebrities who support Trump, and he was one of them. I was like, is that celebrity? Really? The guy who's sitting in
did you
jail
see-
for
Did
murder?
you see what I posted yesterday with the Joker from Heath Ledger Joker on my story from Instagram?
No.
It applies to gay people as well, gay Trumpers as well, but it was aimed at color people of color Trump supporters, and it was the Joker in the scene where he's in the interrogation room and he's like, "Don't talk like them. You're not one of them. You're like me, a freak." And you're only as useful as they'll let you be, or whatever. And like he does the whole
early Jon Stewart comedy before he was famous at all. He was on either Tonight Show or Arsenio or someone like that, and he had a line. He goes, I don't want to talk for the black people, but I'm a Jewish comedian, so it's my job. And if you're black and you're a Republican, you have an identity crisis. Something is wrong.
Yeah. Well, if you're a Tiger King, you're gay and you're a Republican. I actually think at this moment in history, being a black Republican is more excusable than being a LGBT Republican. Definitely a Muslim or Hispanic Republican, because right now we're not seeing a ton of anti-black stuff.
Well, I mean, I think it's short-sighted though.
Huh?
Like they switch their aim from black people to other people of color. But when they deport all of them, you're next.
Oh yeah. That's why I said at this moment, like this is the one slice of time where it's like not that it makes sense, but it's not the craziest thing.
I don't think the current administration is cracking down on cops shooting black people. I don't think they're cracking down.
No.
They're just not putting it in the news because they're shooting other people too.
Yeah.
But for the focus on your friend who needs to be deconverted, and it's your job to subtly deconvert them.
I told them that I was going to do this episode, and they agreed as long as I kept them anonymous. That's why I'm
just because you don't remember their name.
They'll be very upset if they find out that's why.
Sorry, dude.
Yeah. So anyway, but I expect that they will listen because they knew that this was going to be a topic. Because I was like, I don't want you to think that I'm trying to do this. I want to like handle this responsibility correctly.
So,
also, I need to say this because it's been going on for at least 25 minutes. Because of the light above your head, it looks like you have frosted tips, and it's.
I have gray as well.
Right now it looks
reflecting the light.
I'm trying to think of what a Jewish Cisco would be.
Well, I'm telling you, I'm not Goy Fieri.
Goy Fieri, that's a good one too.
There it is, Goy Fieri.
I know his name is
Matthew gets it.
Fieri, but if I said Goy Fieri, nobody would get it because everyone mispronounces his name, but it's Fieri. But
yeah. His real birth name is Guy Ferry, Ferry. He is not a real Italian. It is fake, and it bothers me.
He is a good dude. Everybody
unfortunately, he's a really good dude, but he likes Nickelback.
Oh, maybe he is.
I'm going to send you a clip after this.
He was on Hot Ones. I think that's from the second time he was on Hot Ones, but like during the stay-at-home period, and they got to mail him things. And he was such a good person. Like he was so good. Like it was like all mask off and all character off. It was just him, which is the joy of Hot Ones. When you're dealing with the heat, you can't put on a fake face. You're being yourself. And he was such a good person. The first one I really liked him.
He's a really good dude. I always thought he was a bit of a douche canoe. There is enough like lore that he's a bit of a douche. However, when he was a guest DJ on Sirius XM during the pandemic, like you mentioned, and he's like, "This is one of my favorite bands, Nickelback." I was like, "Nope, signed off, done. I can't, never again, never once, never again."
I'm old enough that I couldn't tell you a Nickelback song to know I like them or don't like them. I know
Look at this photograph. I actually don't understand. I'm not going to defend Nickelback, but I'm going to say I don't understand Nickelback hate. And people get like real upset about it. And I asked someone one time and they said, it's just so generic. And I'm like, so much fucking popular music is generic.
Oh, man, but I love generic. Hold on, what was his name? Hold on, gotta Google.
I'm really excited to see where this joke goes.
It's not a joke. It's a quote. The lead singer of Fine Young Cannibals. I know you. It was like your time.
Yeah, I know you. I know you, he drives me crazy.
Yeah.
Like no one else. I feel like it's like Rupert or something because he's British. He's got like a
Roland Gift, maybe.
Yeah,
Roland Gift. Yeah, British.
Well,
British
not too far.
So I saw an interview with him back when I was like in college, like in the late '80s, and he said when like they were like an alternative band, like really like niche music before She Drives Me Crazy, before that album came out, and he was being interviewed on MTV because there's a channel we used to have that focused on music at one point, and he said, "Yeah, we decided we needed to make some money and make a hit, and pop music is basically white bread." It's easy to make. You can turn it out. Everyone's taste the same. Everybody likes it. Nobody gets offended by it. And you could just make a lot of money selling it. So we decided to make an album of white bread. And I thought that's such a perfect encapsulation of folk music.
I like that.
Of pop music.
Yeah. I like, so Alex, even though you don't like Nickelback, there's a lot of other bands that I think are the exact same thing. And
which is the point.
But one of them that I really think is one of the jokes I've heard that's really hilarious is someone was talking about Mumford and Sons, and someone says, "Oh, you mean Imagine Wagons?"
Oh, Jesus. that is fucking excellent.
It's my favorite. It's my favorite.
I make fun of like that entire era of music where it's all the dudes with the weird flat brimmed hats and skinny jeans and flannel, and all the girls look like Puritans, but they wear weird ankle boots. Like, that entire millennial era of folkish music was just hilarious.
Have you heard Have you heard the Dead South? The band The Dead South?
No.
They're Canadian Mumford and Sons?
Yes. Okay, no. I keep trying to remember the name of them. Thank you. I keep trying to remember the name of them.
And Hell Will Be in Good Company was a big crossover hit that actually was popular.
The Dead South. Yes, that's them. Okay. I keep telling I was like, my wife, honey, there's this Canadian Mumford and Sons, and there's the dude with the tie and the suspenders, and he plays the bass, and I can't remember the name. Well, and we always just said the Canadian Mumford.
They don't have a bass player. He plays cello as a bass. He has a cello, but he plays it as a bass.
Holds it up like the whole
walks around holding it.
Okay, so this is actually related to the topic of the episode because all of those people are making more money than any of our listeners will ever make in their lives. And if that doesn't prove to you that there is no God. Anyway.
So one quick anecdote that might help your friend, maybe have your friend come over for movie night. Our previous guest, friend of the pod, Mikey, and his daughter, previous show topic suggester and frequent commenter in the comment section. Once upon a time, she was very pro marijuana, and he was very anti-religion, and she was a churchgoer, and he was respected, her decisions and about that, but he wasn't thrilled about the drugs. She was over 18, but he was, so he didn't have rules over her, but he was not happy and let her know that. And she said, "You don't understand. It's not as bad as you think." And they kind of had a debate, and they decided to bring it back to documentaries, a documentary off. She was like, "You watch, was it called Super High or
Super High Me with Doug Benson?"
Yeah, she goes, "Watch Super High with me, and you'll get kind of the pot, culture and why I like it." Yeah. And he was like, "Okay, watch Religiosity with me with Bill Maher, who's a shitty person in every way, but he has some good things to say about atheism and explaining it in ways you can get it, despite everything else about him being shitty." And so they cross-watch the shows with each other. And he came away with, "I'm still not thrilled about the drugs, but I guess I kind of get why you like it." And she gave up religion after watching Religiosity. Like especially in the comedy aspect of it, got past her guard on things that, and when she realized how ridiculous some of the Jewish things he was talking about was, like how to get around Sabbath rules, she realized, oh wait, it's the same thing with what I believe. It's just different things. Like I was able, And so maybe you watch Religiosity with that person. Have them over for dinner.
They hate Bill Maher. And I worry that they will not be able to tune out the Bill Maher of it.
I hate Bill Maher too. That's a tough thing about it.
Yeah. When I saw it, I didn't hate Bill Maher. It was like, I mean, he's always been smarmy or whatever, but like, it was like, yeah. And I think
I always felt he was a terrible skeptic with those good atheists, but then he became. But he went into the route of, well, if people aren't going to like me for my shitty things, I'm going to double down on my shitty things.
Yeah, I was about to mention my enjoyment of, especially now, politically and religion wise, completely different than I was when I was younger. For my case, there are a lot of folks that I can only watch the older stuff when they were a little more kept it to themselves and when they were a little more kept it to themselves and they didn't just go full mask off.
Yeah.
Or as Aziz Ansari says, lowercase KKK. and it was always just that as the way that I could enjoy them. So old Bill Maher, no, is actually decently entertaining.
Yeah.
New current Bill Maher, no, he's a creepy old asshole.
Yeah, he's very creepy.
It's not the same. Dennis Leary, same thing. Old Dennis Leary, great.
Yeah.
Current Dennis Leary,
So
yeah, but old Dennis Leary, you always knew that he was this. He just hadn't gotten to it.
When you see it, I can see it now when I'm listening. I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
I mean, I'm older than you, so I guess I was watching him as an older person and saying,
Yeah.
I mean, he's really funny, but it's clear what he's biting his lip and not saying.
Apparently, a lot of his funny stuff is Louis C.K. stuff that he ripped off too.
Oh,
apparently,
steal from
Louis C.K. is one of my favorite.
But he was famous significantly later than Dennis Leary was.
Right.
That's true. Yeah.
So back to Bill Maher for a second. So I literally, in the last hour before we started the podcast, I was listening to YouTube stuff while I was getting ready, and something that popped up was I guess Bill Burr and Bill Maher had another podcast conversation.
Bill to Bill.
Yeah, and Bill Burr mentions, I forget what he brought up. Oh, and he starts using a metaphor of if his house has a leak, like in the roof, he has to take care of it or whatever. And Bill Maher was like, that is so anecdotal. And like, just because it works for you specifically, just because it's your pet issue doesn't mean that it needs to be the thing. And I'm like, Bill, you're so fucking close because you're
right
like
there.
That about marijuana. Like, well,
right.
Trans issue, it's such a small percentage. It's like it's not an important thing, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, but you're number one. Like, he says it all the time about trans stuff. He's like, who gives a shit about the trans people? I need pot, though. Like, I need pot. And I need to be able to get it legally and not, like, hide it in my underwear, my sweaty underwear. Like he is, like, completely devoid of connection to reality anymore. But
so is Bill Burr the new George Carlin? Is that our next episode topic?
Oh, I'm 100% down for that. I think that there is no other contender for the next George Carlin that I can think of. I think Louis C.K. was almost there for a little bit, but I think Bill Burr's the guy now. Like, if there's going to be another George Carlin,
I agree with that. It's absolutely Bill Burr, without a doubt, because he is the most direct, and he's been afforded that luxury and that ability to be that direct in a way that is not as abrasive as some others have been.
I think he falls under like the Anthony Jeselnik model. Like Anthony Jeselnik talks about, there's no topic that's taboo in comedy if you're good at it.
You get
away with it if you're good at it. And Bill Burr is good at it. Like, it's not the joke that you make, it's whether or not it comes across as a joke and funny and not a preaching.
Well, and Bill Burr, other than the last, like, 6 months when he's been kind of a little more openly... Bill Burr is so anti-establishment, I think, that right now, with Trump as the establishment, so many conservatives are like, you used to be funny. You used to be funny. And I think that that's a big thing that, like, we see George Carlin now out of the context of current administration. So you can take George Carlin and go, well, he was so common sense that he would be on my side. And even Trumpers think that. Bill Burr is in the current moment, so he can't really be taken that way when he's... But I think that it's the same thing where, like, if you look at old Bill Burr stuff, you like look at Bill Burr stuff from early 2000s, and you're like, that guy could be conservative, that guy could be liberal.
Yeah.
That
guy, I remember watching him on SNL doing his monologue, being like, I don't love that was really funny, but I don't love what he's edging up against. I wonder what his next step would be if he kept talking. Like, he got to the joke and he stopped. Right. But I don't think he's left or right.
Right. And in the same way that George Carlin, I think George Carlin, it was left on a lot of the social stuff. But I think that, like, it's also a product of the time. And so to try to, and he is constantly brought up consistently on, like, memes and The quotes from him and stuff will be applied to today. But you can afford him if you don't agree with that connotation to it, to today's events, the way that person's projecting. You can say, well, he's been dead for almost 20 years now, so like that's not what he meant. He might think differently. You can like kind of give him that. You can't give that to Bill Burr right now, but 20 years after Bill Burr's death, you could be applying some of the same.
It could be any day now.
Why?
Isn't that his current Netflix special? Like his big thing is like, I'm at the age where it dropped dead suddenly.
Oh, yeah.
Like that. This is the age where people drop dead suddenly any day now.
Yeah, drop dead suddenly is the name of it.
Yeah.
He didn't.
That's his whole
that,
thing. Is I'm at that age, the drop dead suddenly age.
Yeah. No. So I think that like I do think that you're right that he is the new George Carlin. In that way, it's hard to tell when someone's in it. You know, you got to be kind of through it to know for sure. And if he pulls like a Louis C.K. and we find something terrible about him, you know.
Right. Okay. All that needs to be just used for clips and not be in the podcast because I have nothing to do with the topic, and we got long enough that we could afford to cut it all off. But I think your next move is to be open and honest with your friend in what they want to talk about. Talk about don't hold back.
Yeah.
Say where you feel and what you think and what you believe and what you know is fact versus what you don't, but not in a confrontational or it's more of a planting seeds, if it's even that. It's just sharing the truth and let them decide where they want to be.
Yeah, that's a good point. Good. All right. You want to start wrapping up now?
I mean, if I wanted to start wrapping up, I would have to say, hey, if you want me to be able to afford better Wi-Fi, don't listen to me talking about liking this video and subscribing to our YouTube channel and making comments and ringing the bell. None of that fucking shit is important. I need new Wi-Fi. And for that, you need to go to patreon.com/talking about the big stuff.
Patreon.com/talking about the big stuff?
Oh, no, don't cut me off with saying patreon.com/talking about the big stuff. Now I'm going to stop talking. You can talk about patreon.com/talking about the big stuff.
Okay, so if you want to go to patreon.com/talking about the big stuff, you're going to find 4 options on how to support the show. We got a $0 option, which allows you to get the podcast as normal, and it allows you to see these live streams as they go on. You can see.
It does not help my Wi-Fi.
Does not help your Wi-Fi. We also have the $1 option, which is getting you the regular podcast as well as the live stream, but the podcast is early, 4 days early.
Starts to help my Wi-Fi, but how much really?
$3 is where you're going to get like the biggest step up probably because there's a good amount of extra stuff that gets cut out otherwise. And then the $10 fee,
the $3 will help my Wi-Fi.
$10 option will get you a intro before that is just kind of us, reminiscing on the week between episodes. It tends to be, I think, pretty funny. I cannot tell what the fuck is going on with Alex in this. Oh. I thought it was his chest for a second. Like, his chest is so fucking white. I thought he had his shirt open.
He just has an erection because you're going to say the $10 patrons to get to see Alex's penis.
And balls. Okay, and then if you
become a big stuffer, and you would get to see what I'm holding.
Yeah. If for some reason you just can't help us out through patreon.com/talking about the big stuff,
fuck you.
There's still, you could still give us 5 stars or thumbs up on your podcast app of choice. You could give us a review. You could check out our Instagram and other things, and the YouTube. You can comment on the YouTube channel videos.
We post our TikToks and blog our Instagrams and stuff, so other people can be exposed to the glory that is my internet.
Yeah. Okay, and then before I ask you for your final thought, Matthew, I do want to just plug my other podcast that is...
oh, good. That'll be a good way to complete this podcast.
Yeah. It's called The Completionists, and we, over the course of 7 episodes, talk all about the movies of Stanley Kubrick, and we watched all of them and go over that, and we made our own short film that is on the YouTube channel, so you can just go on YouTube and look for The Completionists. I will tag it in the show notes. And yeah, that starts May 20th, which is tomorrow for Matthew and I. That is several days ago for everybody, or a week ago for everybody else.
Including Alex, because he lives in a weird time zone.
Alex, yeah. But yeah, I just wanted to shout that out real quick. So hopefully you guys can check that out if you are into movie podcasts. And then, Matthew, do you have any other thoughts?
I just want to thank you all for being around to talk about the big stuff where we think we know the truth, but we don't want to force it on you.
No.
Remember, the conversation doesn't end here. It's just the beginning. If you have thoughts or questions or topics you'd like us to tackle in a future episode, drop us a line on our social media channels. Engage with this video when you are now watching it as a VOD on YouTube. Send us an email. We love hearing from our listeners, bringing us topics, because if you leave it up to the three of us, we're going to eventually be talking about underwater basket weaving. So we would appreciate you guys reaching out a little bit. Don't forget to subscribe to Talking About the Big Stuff on your favorite platform. Give us a 5-star rating. Engage with it. Criticize us. We need to grow and be better, and you're going to help us be there. You're going to help us get to that point. It really helps us more to reach out and also to keep the conversation going. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back next week with more big ideas and more thought-provoking discussions. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and keep talking about the big stuff.
The preceding podcast has been a Chocolate Diamond Media LLC production. Copyright 2023, all rights reserved.